On the evening of June 7, 2025, as families in northeast Delhi gathered for Eid al-Adha celebrations, a 9-year-old girl stepped out of her home in Nehru Vihar's Dayalpur neighborhood for a simple errand: to deliver ice to a relative just across the street. The air was thick with the scent of biryani and the sounds of festive joy. But she never returned. Hours later, her father would break down a locked door and discover her body stuffed inside a suitcase, semi-nude and lifeless. The accused, Naushad Alam, a 32-year-old biryani seller, who everyone in the neighborhood trusted, a man who allegedly lured the child with chocolates before committing an unspeakable act that would shatter a community's sense of safety forever. Let me take you back to Nehru Vihar, a working-class neighborhood in northeast Delhi where everyone knows everyone. It's the kind of place where kids play cricket in the narrow lanes, where street vendors call out your name, and where trust isn't just expected, it's woven into the fabric of daily life. The Dayalpur area was one of those pockets of the city where doors stayed unlocked during festivals, where children ran freely between homes, and where a biryani seller like Naushad Alam was just another familiar face. Naushad had been running his biryani shop in the neighborhood for years. At 52, he was a fixture in the community, the guy who'd chat about cricket scores while serving up steaming plates of rice and meat. He lived with his wife in a modest flat, just a stone's throw from where the 9-year-old victim's family resided. To the neighbors, he was unremarkable. Friendly, sure, but nothing that would raise an eyebrow. The victim's family was typical of the area. Her father worked as a rickshaw puller, grinding out long hours under Delhi's punishing sun to put food on the table. Her mother managed their small home and looked after the children. The 9-year-old girl was bright, affectionate, and always eager to help. She dreamed of becoming a doctor someday, inspired by stories of healing and helping others. Her infectious smile made her a favorite among the neighbors, a child full of curiosity and innocence in a world that demanded resilience. June 7, 2025, was Eid al-Adha, known locally as Bakrid, one of the most important festivals in the Islamic calendar. The neighborhood was alive with celebration. Families dressed in their finest clothes, homes were decorated, and the smell of biryani and kebabs drifted through every lane. It was a day of community, of sharing meals, of gathering together. It should have been a day of joy. Around 8 p.m. that evening, as the sun began to dip and the call to prayer echoed through the streets, the girl's mother asked her to do something simple: take a bag of ice to a relative's house across the street. It was the kind of errand she'd done 100 times before. The distance was maybe 200 meters. In a neighborhood like this, on a festival evening, it felt completely safe. But as the minutes ticked by and she didn't return, a quiet unease began to settle over the family. Her mother called out from the doorway. No response. 15 minutes became 30. 30 became an hour. The mother's calls grew more urgent. Neighbors were enlisted to help search. "Have you seen her?" became the question on everyone's lips. By 8:30 p.m., panic had fully set in. The girl's father, joined by relatives and neighbors, began combing through the lanes, knocking on doors, calling her name into the growing darkness. The festive atmosphere had turned tense, the laughter replaced by worried murmurs. Where could she have gone? This was a safe neighborhood. Kids didn't just disappear here. Then someone mentioned they'd seen her near Naushad's place earlier that evening. The biryani seller. The flat was just up the street. When the search party reached his door, they found it locked. The lights were off. No one answered their knocks. Something felt wrong. Deeply, viscerally wrong. The girl's father didn't hesitate. With neighbors watching, he forced the door open, the wood splintering under the weight of desperation and dread. Inside, the flat was dark and silent. The air felt thick, oppressive. And then they saw it. A suitcase in the corner of the room, out of place and ominous. With trembling hands, they unzipped it. The world stopped. Inside was the girl's body, semi-nude, her face bruised, lifeless. The father collapsed, his screams piercing the night. Neighbors rushed in, some crying, others frozen in shock. Someone called the police. At 8:41 p.m., the PCR call came through to Dayalpur police station. A minor girl found dead, suspected sexual assault and murder. Within minutes, police vehicles arrived, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows on the festival decorations still hanging in the lanes. Officers cordoned off the flat. DCP Ashish Mishra took charge of the scene. This was no ordinary crime. This was a POCSO case involving the rape and murder of a child. The neighborhood that had been celebrating moments earlier now stood in stunned silence. The festival joy replaced by a horror no one could have imagined. As forensic teams began their work, one question hung in the air. Where was Naushad Alam? Let's rewind a few hours and piece together what actually happened that evening. Based on police evidence, witness statements, and later, Naushad's own confession. Naushad's wife had left earlier in the day to visit her mother, leaving him alone in the flat. This wasn't unusual. She often made these trips during festivals. But it gave Naushad something he needed: privacy. According to his later confession to police, he'd been drinking heavily throughout the day. He claimed he was angry, frustrated about arguments with his wife, about money, about life. The alcohol, he said, clouded his judgment. Around 8 p.m., as the neighborhood buzzed with Eid celebrations, Naushad was standing near his biryani shop when he spotted the 9-year-old girl walking by with a small bag of ice. He knew her. Everyone in the neighborhood knew each other. He called out to her, his voice friendly and familiar. "Beta, come here for a minute," he said. He held up chocolates, the kind of treat any kid would be drawn to during a festival. The girl, trusting and innocent, walked toward him. Naushad offered her the chocolate, chatting casually. Then he asked if she wanted to see something inside his flat. Maybe more sweets, maybe a small gift. We'll never know exactly what he said, but whatever it was enough. The girl followed him inside. The door closed behind them. What happened next is almost unbearable to recount, but it's important to understand the gravity of this crime. Inside that locked flat, Naushad sexually assaulted the child. Medical examiners would later confirm penetrative sexual assault, along with signs of a violent struggle. The girl fought back. Her face bore bruises consistent with being struck, possibly to silence her cries. But she was 9 years old, and Naushad was a grown man. She didn't stand a chance. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation combined with blunt force trauma. Naushad choked her, likely to stop her from screaming, and the assault itself caused fatal injuries. When it was over, the girl lay dead on the floor of his flat. Now came the cover-up. In his confession, Naushad admitted that panic set in immediately. He knew what he'd done. He knew the consequences. He needed to hide the body and flee. He grabbed a suitcase from the corner of his room, one of those cheap, hard-shell cases you find in any Delhi household. He stuffed the girl's body inside, her small frame barely fitting in the cramped space. He zipped it shut, the sound echoing in the silent flat. Then he locked the door and ran. Just like that. He didn't call for help, didn't show remorse, didn't think about the family searching for their daughter just meters away. He grabbed whatever cash he had and headed toward the Uttar Pradesh border, hoping to disappear into the chaos of neighboring towns. Meanwhile, back in Dayalpur, the discovery of the body had triggered an eruption of grief and rage. By the time police arrived and secured the scene, a crowd had gathered outside. Word spread fast in neighborhoods like this. The biryani seller killed a little girl. He raped her. He stuffed her in a suitcase. The details, horrific and unthinkable, rippled through the community. Protests began almost immediately. Residents poured into the streets, demanding justice, demanding the death penalty. How could he do this during Eid? Someone shouted, "We trusted him with our children." The festival that should have been about sacrifice and community had been desecrated by an act of monstrous betrayal. Forensic teams worked through the night. They collected DNA samples from the suitcase, finding traces that matched both the victim and Naushad. They photographed the bruises on the girl's face, documented the signs of sexual assault, and cataloged evidence from the flat. Chocolate wrappers that matched the ones used to lure her, fingerprints on the suitcase, and fibers from her clothing. CCTV footage from a nearby camera became crucial. It showed the girl entering Naushad's flat around 8:05 p.m. It never showed her leaving. It also captured Naushad fleeing the area shortly after. His gait hurried, his face obscured as he moved toward the main road. Police registered an FIR under the most serious sections of Indian law. Murder under Section 103 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, causing death under Section 66, and aggravated penetrative sexual assault under Section 6 of the POCSO Act. This wasn't just murder. This was the rape and murder of a child, crimes that carry the possibility of the death penalty in India. DCP Ashish Mishra held a press conference the next morning. His face was grim as he addressed the media and the devastated community. We have identified the accused as Naushad Alam, a local biryani seller. 6 teams have been formed to track him down. We are checking bus stations, railway stations, and have alerted police in Uttar Pradesh. We will catch him. But Naushad had a head start. And in a country as vast and crowded as India, disappearing isn't as hard as you'd think. The manhunt began in earnest on June 8, 2025. 6 police teams fanned out across Delhi and into neighboring Uttar Pradesh, armed with Naushad's photo, his phone records, and tips from informants. The pressure was immense, not just from the victim's family, but from the entire community, and now the national media, which had picked up the story. Headlines screamed about the Eid horror and the biryani seller murder. The case had become a symbol of urban India's hidden dangers. Investigators started with Naushad's phone records. His device had pinged cell towers in the Dayalpur area until around 8:45 p.m. on June 7th, then went silent, likely turned off or destroyed. But digital footprints don't disappear that easily. Police traced his last known movements toward the interstate bus terminal, suggesting he'd fled to Uttar Pradesh, where he had distant relatives. Teams raided addresses in Ghaziabad, Meerut, and Hapur, small towns where someone like Naushad could blend into the crowd. They questioned his relatives, searched guest houses, and showed his photo to bus drivers and shopkeepers. For 2 days, the trail went cold. Frustration mounted. Every hour Naushad remained free felt like an insult to the victim's family, who sat in mourning while their daughter's killer walked free. But on June 10, 2025, the breakthrough came. A tip reached the police. A man matching Naushad's description had been spotted in Hapur, a town about 60 kilometers east of Delhi, known for its busy markets and transient population. He was staying in a cheap lodge near the railway station, laying low, possibly planning his next move. A team led by officers from Dayalpur police station coordinated with Uttar Pradesh police and converged on the location. They moved quietly, not wanting to spook him. At around 2 p.m., they spotted Naushad slipping through a crowded market, his head down, trying to blend in. Officers closed in from multiple directions. When Naushad realized he was cornered, he panicked. Instead of surrendering, he pulled out a small blade, a kitchen knife he'd been carrying for protection, or perhaps for exactly this moment. Constable Amit Man, one of the officers, tried to approach him calmly, hands raised. "Don't do this, Naushad. It's over." But Naushad wasn't listening. In a desperate lunge, he slashed at the constable, the blade catching Man's arm and drawing blood. The market erupted in chaos, people screaming, running, officers shouting commands. In the confusion, Naushad tried to make a break for it, shoving through the crowd. That's when another officer fired a warning shot. The bullet struck Naushad in the leg, not a kill shot, but enough to bring him down. He collapsed onto the pavement, clutching his bleeding limb, the blade clattering away. Officers swarmed him, cuffing his hands behind his back as he groaned in pain. Constable Mann, despite his injury, helped secure the scene. Naushad was rushed to a local hospital for treatment. His leg wound stabilized before he was transported back to Delhi, under heavy police escort. As news of his capture spread, crowds gathered outside Dayalpur police station. Some cheered. Others shouted for vigilante justice. "Hang him! He doesn't deserve a trial!" The anger was palpable, raw. In the interrogation room, Naushad's demeanor shocked investigators. There was no remorse, no tears, no pleas for forgiveness. He confessed to the crime in a flat, emotionless tone, as if recounting a mundane event. "I was drunk," he said. "My wife had left. I saw the girl, and things happened. I didn't plan it. When asked about the suitcase, he shrugged. I panicked. I didn't know what else to do." When asked if he felt sorry for what he'd done, he looked away and said nothing. Officers described him as eerily detached, showing no understanding of the magnitude of his actions. An additional charge was filed against Naushad for the attack on Constable Mann, attempted murder of a police officer. This would be added to the murder and POCSO charges he already faced. The case was airtight. DNA evidence, CCTV footage, witness statements, and his own confession. There was no doubt about his guilt. As of October 2025, Naushad Alam remains in custody at Tihar Jail, awaiting trial. Legal experts predict he will be convicted and likely sentenced to life imprisonment or death, given the severity of the crime. The family has received some financial assistance from the government and support from local NGOs, but no amount of money can fill the void left by their daughter's death. The community of Nehru Vihar has changed. Parents no longer let their children run freely during festivals. Trust, once abundant, is now guarded. The biryani shop remains shuttered, a grim reminder of the evil that can hide behind a familiar face. And the suitcase, that horrific piece of evidence, sits locked in a police warehouse, a silent witness to a crime that shook a nation. In the end, the Delhi biryani murder wasn't just about one man's monstrous act. It was about the fragility of trust in close-knit communities, about how predators exploit familiarity, and about the innocence stolen from a child who should have been celebrating a festival with her family. Naushad Alam's name will be forgotten eventually, but the scar he left on Nehru Vihar and on India's collective conscience will remain. The case revealed uncomfortable truths, that danger doesn't always come from strangers in dark alleys, but from neighbors who smile and serve you food. That festivals of joy can turn into nightmares in an instant. That justice, while necessary, can never undo what was done. The truth didn't just solve a case, it revealed the darkness no one wanted to see.